When Charity Dingle agreed to become a surrogate for her granddaughter Sarah Sugden and her partner Jacob Gallagher, few could have imagined the chaos that would unfold. Long-time viewers of Emmerdale, aware of Charity's troubled past and her habit of ending up at the centre of disaster, might not have been quite as surprised. With Sarah unable to go through the adoption process due to Fanconi anemia, which limits her life expectancy, and also unable to carry a child after an emergency hysterectomy, Charity stepped in. After 2 rounds of IVF, it initially appeared to have worked. But things were not that simple. Charity was already pregnant, and not by her husband Mackenzie Boyd. Instead, it was the result of a drunken encounter with Ross Barton. When Ross learned about the pregnancy, he suspected the baby could be his and insisted on a DNA test. Charity secretly altered the results and carried on with her life, trying to ignore the truth that the child growing inside her was actually Ross's. She eventually confessed everything to Chas Dingle, who reluctantly agreed to keep the secret despite her anger. However, Vanessa Woodfield later told Mac that he might not be the father and that the baby could belong to someone else. Mac rushed to reveal everything to Sarah and Jacob, sparking huge turmoil, but Charity stopped him in time. She urged him to take a DNA test, knowing he could not be the father. Mac had already told Ross, who quickly realized the baby was not his rival's, but likely his own. Although he threatened to expose the truth, he ultimately chose to stay silent. This week, Charity went into labor in Mac's broken-down car. Ross stepped in to help and got them to hospital, but circumstances forced the delivery to happen in a loft setting, where Charity suffered heavy bleeding and required urgent medical care. Next week, Jacob and Katie are overjoyed as they bring baby Leyla home, named in honor of Jacob's late mother, and finally embrace life as parents. The following day, Ross and Mac visit the new family, bringing a gift from Ross and Charity's son Moses. Ross is visibly emotional, especially when Jacob encourages him to hold the baby he helped deliver. Despite his hesitation, Jacob warmly invites Ross to a family celebration for Leyla. Long-time Emmerdale fans know that an emotional Ross can be unpredictable, and now that he is living in the same village as his daughter, the question remains whether he will keep his distance or end up tearing the Dingle family apart. Mandy Dingle's suggestion shocks Paddy Kirk in Emmerdale next week, leaving him so horrified that he walks out on her. Paddy is already under intense pressure as he faces the frightening possibility of a prison sentence, but things become even more overwhelming after a poorly judged comment from Mandy makes the situation worse. His nightmare began when he discovered that his father Bear Wolf had been caught up in Celia Daniels' brutal human trafficking and modern slavery network. The ordeal also dragged in Dylan Penders, who had been exploited by Celia and Ray Walters as part of their criminal operation. When Paddy tried to save Dylan from being killed by Ray, he nearly lost his own life in the process. The situation escalated further when Bear stepped in and accidentally killed Ray, changing everything for the family. In an attempt to protect Bear, Paddy and Dylan hid Ray's body, hoping to keep him out of legal trouble. However, guilt eventually overwhelmed Bear, who confessed to everything. Wanting to protect his father, Paddy and Dylan also admitted their involvement, which led to them being charged with perverting the course of justice. Since then, Paddy has been struggling with the threat of prison, while also worrying about Bear, who remains in custody. His mental health has taken a hit, especially as the situation reminds him of a previous low point in his life. With support from Marlon Dingle, he has been trying to cope, and together they uncovered bank records linked to Ray that briefly helped Moira Dingle, but ultimately made things worse for Bear by suggesting he may have been involved in the money laundering. Next week, Paddy's daughter Eve Dingle becomes upset after hearing rumours about her father and the case. Unable to shield her any longer, Paddy explains that he could go to prison because of what happened involving her grandfather. Devastated, Eve pleads with him not to leave her, and both break down emotionally. Seeing Paddy in such distress, Mandy suggests that he should consider allowing Bear to take full responsibility in court so he can save himself. The idea leaves Paddy shocked and disgusted, and he storms off in anger. Although they later make up, and Mandy promises to stand by him no matter what happens, Paddy is left deeply fearful about what the future holds. With Celia and Ray's actions still casting a long shadow, the question remains whether Paddy, Bear, and Dylan will end up in prison and be forced to leave the village behind for a long time. For now, things look increasingly bleak for the beloved vet. Emmerdale star Natalie Ann Jamieson has revealed she was recently involved in a car accident, but was luckily helped by her former co-star, Olivia Bromley. Sharing an emotional post on Instagram, Jamieson described Bromley as a hero for rushing to her aid after the incident. Find yourself a friend who will drive halfway across Yorkshire to rescue you when you've been hit by a lorry. Rip, little red car. Thank you, my lovely Olivia Bromley, for being our hero, wrote the actress, best known for playing Amy Wyatt in the ITV soap. She added that everyone involved came away unharmed, confirming there were no injuries, and thanked fans for their supportive messages. The post also featured selfies of the pair together, while Bromley, who plays Dawn Fletcher, responded with heart emojis. Co-star Ash Palmiciano also commented that he was relieved to hear they were both safe. Jamieson's final appearance as Amy aired in February 2025, when her character was killed off following a dramatic limousine crash. Reflecting on her exit at the time, she praised the cast and crew and thanked viewers for their support throughout her 6 years on the show. Meanwhile, Bromley is reportedly expected to leave Emmerdale later this year after 8 years in the role, although this has not yet been officially confirmed. Reports suggest her character may be written out as part of upcoming storylines. Some commentary has already called for Dawn's exit to be handled with care, suggesting she should be given a strong and memorable farewell rather than a quiet departure, especially given her long journey and character development on the soap. Emmerdale is set to reintroduce a familiar face from Beowulf's modern slavery storyline next week, as Paddy Kirk searches desperately for a way to save his father. With Bear's trial over Ray Walter's death approaching, Paddy is increasingly anxious as he hopes for some kind of breakthrough that could change everything. However, with his own legal situation also hanging over him after helping to conceal Ray's death, time is running out on all fronts. The pressure intensifies when Paddy's daughter Eve becomes upset after hearing rumours about her father. Heartbroken, Paddy is forced to admit that prison could be a real possibility. As Eve pleads with him not to leave her, Paddy is left emotionally devastated. Mandy Dingle then makes a controversial suggestion, telling Paddy he may need to let Bear take responsibility for everything. Shocked and disgusted, Paddy storms out in anger. Although the pair later reconcile, and Mandy promises to stand by him regardless of the outcome, tensions remain high. Later, during a prison visit with Bear, Paddy is stunned when he comes face-to-face with Simo, a survivor from Bear's time on the farm. Believing Simo had died, Paddy sees him as a potential key witness who could support Bear's case. Paddy immediately pleads with him to testify, but Simo refuses. While he admits Bear doesn't deserve prison, he explains that he cannot go through the trauma of reliving what happened under Ray and Celia Daniels, as it would severely affect his mental health. Left with no clear options, Paddy is forced to confront the possibility that things may not go his way. As he looks out over the village he calls home, he begins to fear that it could be his last night there for a long time. The question now is whether Paddy will end up behind bars, separated from his family and everything he loves. Emmerdale airs weeknights at 8 p.m. on ITV1 and is also available to stream on ITVX.